You're listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation network of podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
All right, Leafsnation, you're listening to episode 25 of the Leafsnation Radio Podcast. I got Scott and Kyle here with you. But before we get into all of our hockey talk, we have to celebrate Canada qualifying for their first World Cup in 36 years after beating Jamaica yesterday. And man, Kyle, I know you're a big soccer fan too. So what was your reaction? Were you watching the game and did you freak out?
Oh, of course I was watching the game. It was insane. Just the way that they did it too, in style, doing it at home, 4-0 win, everything. It was just so like sweet to see. And like 3.5 years ago or something like it was now, like I went to my first men's national team game at BMO Field. They didn't even sell tickets to the upper level. It was a CONCACAF Nations League qualifier because that's how low Canada was ranked at the time, still against Dominica. 5-0 win there, and now the team's beating Jamaica 4-0. But no, it's just incredible to see the progression of this team just so quickly, which is so rare to see at the international level. And yeah, it was just that kind of like amazing moment where they got to do it at home, they got to do it in style, and everyone got to kind of watch it together. And it was amazing to see the timeline kind of come together and support it, which is, if you told me a few years ago that hockey Twitter or whatever would be that supportive of not just soccer, not just Canada soccer, but the men's national team too, I would have laughed in your face. It's
so funny you say that because Mike, when we were watching this game, he's like, I don't remember watching Canada men's soccer when I was growing up. And I'm like, he's like,
because he didn't.
Right. I know. He's like, was it on TV? I'm like, yeah, there were games on TV, but unfortunately, they were such a bad team that no one could justify taking out, 2 hours of their day to watch them lose to like Honduras. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, no, they were on. It's just they never made any noise. And Canada, in terms of soccer, is specifically known for their women's team who could compete in these tournaments. So watching that yesterday, and not only watching them win, but watching the talent that they have on the field, and these guys like Buchanan, who hopefully has an unbelievable run in the World Cup, get signed to a really big club. Like this, the potential for the game in Canada and even North America, like, is huge. And that's what makes me so happy is we're finally coming to a point in time, and I'm 30 years old, and this is the first time in my life where I can say this, that soccer / football, whatever you want to call it, is going to start being respected and appreciated. We started to see that a little bit with Toronto FC. But now when it's like a country and we qualify for the World Cup and we end that drought and hopefully have a solid run. I think teams might sleep on Canada because let's remember
it's going to be a tough out.
Honest to God, I agree. Let's remember Alphonso Davies didn't play a lot of these games. And I know you can't chalk up soccer to one game, but he's such an unbelievable presence up top for them that I would not sleep on Canada. Everyone's roasting me in the comments for that on my TikTok account, but I'm like, I would not sleep on this team because they're athletic, they're hungry, and they're gonna go in with like nothing to lose. Where teams like France, Brazil, Portugal, hopefully Kyle, they're gonna go in with as the top contender. So I hope Canada has a solid run. Like I'm just
and if there's any team out of like, depending on whether they stay in pot 4 or whether they do get up to pot 3, whatever it is, you don't want to play a team like Canada out of one of those lower pots that has that kind of offensive power that can win a game 4-3 if they need to. Like, it'll be really, really fun to see.
And Scott, you watched the game.
Yeah, it was.
How about that?
I know.
Well, it was the first time I like kind of realized it was on as it was going on. Like I always it's like I'll always just see people talking about it. I'm like, oh, I guess that was on. Whoops. But yeah, no, it was an entertaining game to watch. It gave me vibes of Game 7 of like between the Raptors and the 76ers.
Okay.
In their,
hey, sorry, you mentioned Game 7 on a Leafs podcast, and I don't know where you're going.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Toronto.
Down our face, we can't explain it. Just a natural physical reaction.
I'm talking about the Toronto team that actually does well in Game 7.
Oh, yeah.
Although even then they were kind of inconsistent until that game. But like for me, that game was pretty significant in my basketball fandom because up until then I didn't really watch Raptors all that much. But watching that game is like, okay, I can't not watch this sport now. And I'm feeling the same thing with soccer. I might start watching a lot more soccer now.
I love
especially the World Cup now that I don't have to like go way back into my heritage to figure out what team I need to cheer for. with like a country I have no other association with otherwise.
Well,
so
it's so true. I mean, for my whole life, when I'd watch soccer, Poland would qualify or sometimes not, but that'd be my team to cheer for because my parents come from Poland. Canada wasn't an option. For the first time in my life, I get to cheer for the country that I'm born in. And I feel like this nation is about to really stand behind, because you got to give Canada credit. Whenever our country goes and plays in a tournament or a World Cup or an Olympic Games, everyone's behind the athletes. And I think this is going to be extra special because it's, for some of us, for most of us, it's going to be the first time watching Canada men's soccer go to one of these tournaments and actually have the potential to compete.
Yeah, it's crazy. So my last question, though, on the Canada soccer, until we actually get to what this podcast is supposedly about. I know
Formula
that
One,
I
right?
don't want, exactly. I know that I don't want Portugal and Canada in the same group. If Poland were to qualify, would you want them in the same group?
You know what? No, but if they happen to be, I would cheer for Canada over Poland.
Yeah, same.
You know, I'm not one of those people who has like 3 teams in the World Cup. Like I'm not like that. I think this is so unique because I think obviously Canada is made up of so many immigrants, and we would cheer for the country where our parents or our grandparents came from. But now again, for the first time, we can look at Canada and be like, I was born in Canada, for me specifically, at least. And if Poland were to play Canada, I would support Canada. I mean, I wouldn't actively cheer against Poland. It wouldn't be like it wouldn't be a heartbreaking loss, but my 100% full support would be for the Canadian men's national team, and hoping that, you know, they get, best case scenario, they both go through, and you know, magic happens, but we'll see. I mean, Poland has a game this week. Kyle, my question for you is, with North Macedonia beating Italy, which stunned the soccer world, are you a little nervous that team has a little bit of a momentum going into their game against Portugal tomorrow?
It's a little nerve-wracking. Like, it shouldn't be, but it is, especially because Ronaldo said something about how like he's guaranteeing them to make the World Cup now. And just like, it feels like the writing is on the wall for like something disastrous to happen, because there's no way that Canada and Portugal can make it. Like, there's got to be something that goes wrong. So we'll see. But the thing that I am glad about is that they got through Turkey, first of all, but then North Macedonia had like the defensive gem and scored the late winner against Italy. To do it twice is tough to do. So we'll see.
But as a Portugal fan, you must remember the Euro Cup when Greece did it twice to Portugal in Portugal to win the Euro.
Sorry, my audio is not working. I can't hear you right now. Sorry.
Yeah, honest to God, that's what I keep saying. So every sport's like this, but soccer, I swear, I don't know why, but it's like extra heartbreaking or extra overwhelming in the best way.
Yeah.
So obviously, I want to see Cristiano Ronaldo. This is going to be his last World Cup, right?
Yeah.
I would assume. I would love to see him make it. And he's, in my opinion, my greatest of all time player. So I would love to see Portugal win and go through. But what a storyline it would be if both Italy and Portugal, God forbid for you, Kyle, didn't make it.
No, it'd be crazy. It'd be insane.
Well, then we have something big to talk about the next episode. All right.
Let's hope not.
Let's quickly get into the Leafs. And I'm sure a lot of hockey fans are following Canada soccer too, but that was a nice way to get for this episode. Let's talk about the next gen jerseys. Justin Bieber designing these jerseys for the Toronto Maple Leafs in partnership with Adidas and NHL. The first reversible jersey in North American sports. Now, you guys are inside the Toronto bubble. What's been kind of the review on the jerseys, and do fans like it? And I have a feeling like Gen Z must love it, but maybe the older traditional fans, maybe not, but you guys tell me.
It was funny, the video they put it with like Sittler and everybody like that, with the jerseys, with like some of like their family members and stuff, which was cool. After some of like the older generation maybe was a bit hesitant to it. I think the main critique of it, I think a lot of people like the jersey itself. I think the only thing that I really saw negative about it was that it was the yellow, and so it's the Bruins colors, that kind of thing on the reversible side, which I kind of get, but it's the underside of the reversible side, so I don't also care. It's not like the Leafs are wearing yellow on the ice in a regular season game. So no way. I think the Leafs have a tough time like doing any kind of alternate jersey that isn't a throwback, just because you've got basically 2 colors to work with. There's not really a ton you can do with it. But I like the kind of all black look that they have with it. And I think it looked really sharp on the ice as well. So overall, it's positive for me. I think overall it's been really well received. And it was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, definitely the only like criticisms I saw were from like the older generation, especially with like there are a few people I'd see who'd be like, oh, great, this team can't even win in the first round of the playoffs, and here they are getting jerseys designed by Justin Bieber. And it's like, okay, well, like, you can have fun. But yeah, no, I was a pretty big fan of the jerseys. I hope we get to see it more than just this one game. Because honestly, I'm a huge proponent of black jerseys that aren't just black and white. Like I like the Stars one that they have with like the black and the neon green, like stuff like that. Pretty much black with any color that isn't just white is like a pretty good look. And I think more teams should go that route.
I think that there's right now a disconnect between hockey and pop culture that this would be such a smart move for not just Toronto, but the league in general to have, Justin Bieber's obviously a massive Toronto Maple Leafs fan. He creates this reversible jersey with Drew House. He's a genius, let's just be honest. And it has, for the most part, a really positive review. And the Toronto Maple Leafs are saying that they want to continue wearing these jerseys throughout the season. So I just think that it's such a smart move from Justin Bieber, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the NHL to start going into those partnerships. Let's be honest, like a lot of the biggest stars in pop culture are big sports fans. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Drake was like unboxing player cards recently, and he pulled out a rookie card that was Michael Jordan. It's worth so much money. So these pop stars are super big sports fans. And if the NHL and pop culture can start coming together more, it could be a really big win for fans, win for the pop star, win for the NHL team or whatever you want to, whatever team is, sorry, Cash always comes in at the best
That's okay.
time. Whatever team is collaborating. So I just love to see it because I think it's the future. Just like TikTok and getting your news on TikTok has become almost the new normal. I think that the NHL and other NHL teams need to start thinking bigger picture. And how do we start getting that Gen Z demographic on board? And I think Justin Bieber and the Leafs kind of really nailed that.
Well, yeah, just think about like the raw advertising numbers of getting like multiple different Instagram posts on Justin Bieber's feed to 200 plus million followers or whatever the number is. It's crazy. Like those are the advertising totals that people like dream of, and pay like millions of dollars to get, and the Leafs get it while also making profit. Like it makes a ton of sense to do.
Yeah, I'd like to see more experimenting with like different colors beyond just blue and white for the Leafs as well. I get maybe why you wouldn't do like a green leaf for a St. Pat's jersey, because that could have other connotations, but or if you want to go with the reverse of that color scheme, because sometimes they've had brown with the color, you probably don't want a brown jersey too, because that'll just be instant jokes for the other fans.
We'd get trolled for that hard.
Yeah.
Okay, what color would you want to see, Scott, if you could pick?
If I'd pick, I mean, it's hard because they don't play in July, but it'd be cool if they did just like a Canada themed jersey, like because they literally have the leaf.
Yeah,
in front of them, like if a red and white jersey for a specific like Canada themed day would be cool.
That'd be sick.
I think that's the one that jumps to mind initially, but yeah, I think just like having more beyond just the traditional blue and white is kind of nice to see. Which, like, honestly, I wouldn't hate if they flipped the jerseys inside out and wore the black and gold ones as well sometimes too. I feel like that'd be cool.
I don't hate
especially against the Bruins. Okay. That'd be funny.
That would actually be like a nice that'd be a nice little sprinkle of sauce. I actually would like that idea. You should talk to their marketing team, Scott. Pitch the idea.
I can. I'm still.
You just get to run Twitter. The social media that day too.
Oh my God, I'd love that actually. I'd love that. Did you guys see the video of Auston Matthews and JB in the locker room and Auston giving him a hug? I forget how tall and big Auston Matthews is outside of equipment until I see videos like that. Like, the guy's a machine and he's a unit. Like, honest to God, his quads and like how he bear hugged Justin Bieber. I'm like, he could probably toss him accidentally just through his weight.
Yeah. People forget like he's like what 6'3", 2 something. Like he's big.
Yeah. I'm pretty tall myself, and he'd make me look pretty tiny.
Honestly, how tall are you, Scott?
6'2". So I guess not in terms of height, but just like size wise, they definitely would.
Yeah, I can't. I'm this webcam stuff, man. You guys just got to move to Edmonton. We can do these in person. Just kidding. All right. Auston Matthews, let's talk about him. Justin Bieber's best friend that we all know. That collab is a collab that I like to keep up with, but becomes only the 5th Leaf ever to score 48 goals and the first in 28 years. Career high 48 goals right now for Auston Matthews. 24 points in his last 14 games. This guy is a machine. Still leads the league in goals. Obviously, we know Draisaitl is trying to catch up. He scored a hattie against Calgary. Scott, I thought of you. But right now, it's still Auston Matthews leading by 1 goal. At this point in time, what makes him the most deserving, arguably, to win the Hart Trophy?
That's the great question, isn't it? The Hart Trophy. For starters, it was a nice week to have both Auston Matthews and Leon Draisaitl in my keeper fantasy league.
Nice. Oh my gosh, Kyle, you cashed out with that one.
Oh, I set the so the league has been around for like 4 years now, and I set like the overall like weekly points record this week. It was just a silly week. Anyways,
how many points was it?
It was like 168 or something like that. Like the scoring is like the whole thing, but yeah, it was a nice week to have them. But yeah, in terms of the Hart Trophy, I think it's a 2-man race between him and Shesterkin at this point, and you kind of have to debate. It's tough because like everyone says goalie's the most valuable position. Shesterkin is having such an unbelievable season in net, all these things. But in terms of skaters, the overall value that Matthews brings in terms of the best even strength scorer in the league, in terms of the raw numbers, the great defensive totals, and his ability to, at will, seemingly take pucks away from people, either in the defensive zone or the neutral zone, and turn it immediately into offense is something that is basically unparalleled in the league. Like Patrice Bergeron is great defensively, but in terms of single-handedly turning that from defense to offense, I think Matthews is definitely the best in the league at it. So when you look at all those factors, and then you look at the raw point totals, his recent run, all these different things, the Leafs standing in the overall points, all those things. It's really tough to say that at the very least, he hasn't been the most valuable skater. Whether he's the most valuable player going up against Shesterkin, all these other things is a bit more of a debate. But in terms of skater, I think it's definitely Matthews at this point.
Yeah, I think you could also make the argument for Cale Makar as well, just with the season
that's true.
Having, or like even Roman Josi, if we're talking defensemen, like they've both been insane points wise as far as the defensemen go. Like it's numbers that even Erik Karlsson didn't put up in his prime, which says a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it really is just between those two players, it seems like. And Shesterkin actually seems to be struggling a little bit.
He had a couple off games.
I have him in fantasy, and while that hasn't hurt me, I'm in the middle of a 9-week winning streak.
Nice.
For me, it's always what has me kind of clinging on to Shesterkin as a potential Hart candidate is just like how bad the Rangers are without him, or at least it's a lot easier for them to lose games without him, which I think is what really defines like a Hart candidate. Like goalie is the most valuable position, so it's always hard to judge. But like when there is such a difference between two goalies on a team and how that impacts the team, I think that's when it should be taken into note, kind of like with Price when he won it in 14-15. But yeah, just like the way Matthews has the ability to take over a game at either end of the ice and just put up like just scoring insane goals every game. Like the one he scored last night on the empty net where he didn't even mean to, he was just clearing it and it's, oh, I scored again. Like it was just insane. Also, while since Caroline mentioned the Draisaitl hat trick, I'd just like to point out how like Leon Draisaitl of a game that was to have a hat trick, only score one of those 3 goals at even strength, and be a -4. That is the most Leon Draisaitl game of all time.
Honest to God, when you say things like this, I wish Mike was on the episode so you guys can go back and forth. I think one day when we don't have a lot going on to talk about the Leafs.
Yeah, we need a special episode.
We're going to have a special episode of like, Kyle, you and I and whoever else is on, we can moderate it. But I just want
I'll just get some popcorn.
Yeah, honest to God, it'd just be like a watch along. But I want Mike and Scott to like go back and forth because that makes me, not to mention, like, You know, it's bad when Leon scores a hat trick and the team still loses 9-5. Like that was such a crazy game that you're just like, I mean, that's a whole defensive issue in itself that, you know, we're not an Oilers podcast, but if we were, it'd be fun to break that one down.
I'll never not say that Leon Draisaitl is a very skilled player. Like he definitely has those tools. It just doesn't always end well for him on the ice. That's all. And I think Oilers fans don't realize that as much as they should.
It would be so interesting. One day we will schedule this podcast for you and
Mike. It's a summer episode. That feels like an off-season.
Let's do it in the summer. Yeah. Let's do it in the summer when we're all missing hockey and we need a little bit of spice in our life. And I swear to God, you and Mike will have such a fun time with it because he the other day I'm like, Matthews or Draisaitl? He was like, Draisaitl, no question. Like, no, it's not even a question. I'm like, man, why are Oilers fans so like, they're not even considering
biased?
Yeah, they're not even considering the other side. They don't want any stats. They don't want any conversation. They don't want to watch Matthews play. It's just immediately like loyalty, which I get and I appreciate it, but no one wants to hear the other side when it comes to Matthews conversation.
I think it's a lot of like Alberta's inferiority complex with like the Toronto Maple Leafs and like Toronto as a city. I think that plays a role into it where they just like don't want to pay attention to the popular people.
Oh my God, Scott, you kill me. Quickly, while we're on the topic of Auston Matthews, because I totally forgot about this, but Svechnikov, that was him, right? Who had the cross check to the neck/face area. Wasn't even talked about by NHL player safety. And fans went wild because they're like, isn't that a 2-game suspension? Some argued that it even looked worse than what Matthews did to Rasmus Dahlin. What do you guys think about that?
I guess the argument from player safety would be like, it's not retaliatory. It was like a play during like play, I guess. I don't know. Like we know how inconsistent it is. Like we knew that this was going to come.
The fact that it isn't retaliatory almost makes it seem like it should be more of a suspension than the Matthews one, because like Matthews cross-checked Dahlin in the face. I'm not justifying it here, but he did it because the refs didn't do their job. And like and we saw that again on Saturday night as well against the Habs. The refs just continue to not do their job. And like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, refs are always biased against the Leafs, because that just feels like a little bit too tinfoil hat to like be true. But like, even like, how stupid is this league to not like talk to
just finish
the
it there?
I mean, yeah, but like you just came out, like you're in the middle of financial trouble because of a pandemic. Imagine like not having a conversation with your officials to be like, hey, maybe like don't screw over this team that could give us a lot of money by going on a deep cup run and help bring financial stability back to the league. But instead you have situations like I think it was like 5 years ago now when they asked Bettman about the division format at the like a Winter Classic or Heritage Classic, and he basically just trolled on the Leafs. And it's like, oh, nice to see he's treating his most profitable franchise very well. Like they're like, yeah, he just trolled on him, and it's just like, okay, cool. That's where we are, I guess.
Yeah, it's no surprise. Well, now talking about all of this, did you guys, this is a very big sidebar, but this is where my mind goes. You guys you guys had to know what happened with Will Smith and Chris.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't watch it live, but like I saw it afterwards. Yeah.
That was one of those like just moments in pop culture that you can't avoid on Twitter. Like it's just everywhere.
Honestly, okay, so we weren't watching the Oscars, but Mike was on Twitter and he goes, oh my God, something went down at the Oscars. And guys, this might be the first award show that I didn't watch in a long time. But
No.
I'm like, it's gonna be, I'm like, I don't really know any of the movies. I haven't really watched a movie. So I'm like, I'm just gonna, do my own thing. And I'm like, no way. So we rewind it back on TV. And my first reaction was like, that has to be staged. Like that has to be for ratings. And then I'm like dissecting all of it. I'm like, I don't think it's staged. Like poor Chris Rock, after he got slapped, he like couldn't put his words together. He's like, I'm here giving out a documentary for the Oscar.
Yeah.
An Oscar for the documentary. I'm like, that's real. Like if it was fake, he wouldn't trip. I don't know. I was so stunned. It might be, you guys remember when obviously Kanye did it with Taylor. And we thought that that was the most horrible thing to happen at an award show. Will Smith just like topped it ginormously.
See, I think it is staged because I looked into it, and the guy that slapped Chris Rock is a paid actor, so I think it was staged.
Random, eh?
Okay, yeah. That was good. I'll give you that one.
I saw some tweet that apparently he said the same joke at like Chris Rock said the same joke at the rehearsals, and that didn't happen because Will Smith wasn't there, so he obviously wasn't planned to be part of the Oscar show aside from like winning an Oscar. So yeah, I feel like it probably wasn't staged, especially considering the reactions after too. Like I think they joked about it after, and you could see Will and Jada laughing because for them it was just an awkward situation while everyone else is like
sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
No. I did like the reason. Yeah, I think it's real too, just because like they wouldn't approve something with like curse words in it, right? Like I feel like that would be a tough thing to get approved for like the Academy Awards. So
yeah,
it's not like they need extra eyeballs or anything like that.
To mention, Will Smith was 10 out of 10 mad. Like when I was watching it,
like that was real mad.
Before all of the like Japanese and Australian feeds started to come out on Twitter, right? Like you would watch it just from what was on here in Canada, and it's like you literally hear everything he was saying without actually hearing the audio when he was like, "Get my wife's name out of your effing mouth." And I'm like, this is insane. And I can't even imagine, like you see Lupita in the background and she's just like, holy, that was another thing. I was like, this is real.
Yeah.
I bet you any money, everyone in that room was like, this is about to go down. I don't know. That has to be the craziest thing that's ever happened on live television.
Live TV. Gotta love
it. Right?
it.
I know. Live TV. People, can you imagine people in the control room? Like we know what the industry's like. The control room's like, what do we do?
I
can only imagine them yelling to cut the mics. Like that visual is just, man.
I would love to see the footage of like the people like in charge of all that, just like how they were reacting in that moment.
That was just an insane situation. And again, as someone, we're all in the industry, we know what it must have been like a fire in the back. Like people must have been freaking out, running the Oscars on the production side, Chris Rock.
Like it's already chaos, and just like tossing that bomb in there, like,
Okay. All right. Back to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let's talk about Mitch Marner also setting a new career high with 27 goals. Since the beginning of the year, he's been one of the top point production players in the league. And we all know how his season started versus where it is now, which is literally night and day. What changed so drastically in Mitch Marner's game that has helped him just, pop off, I feel like is the right word for him.
I think like Mitch Marner is like the quintessential like confidence player, where when he doesn't have it, he just looks completely lost, is either trying to do too much stuff or is just not impacting the game in like a meaningful way. But when he's on, he's just like one of the most impactful players out there in terms of being able to do things that few players are able to do in the offensive zone and creating space, finding passing lanes, and even like since the beginning of the year, being able to shoot as well, and not having like the Auston Matthews shot or anything by any means, but being able to pick his spots, catching goalies off guard. And that's exactly what Mitch Marner needs to do to be like an effective goal scorer. Is everybody knows he's going to be looking pass first, all these kind of things, but to catch goalies off guard with a quick release, whether it's a quick slap shot, a quick shot in tight or anything like that, that's where he's most effective. And so we've seen him be that confident Marner player since basically the turn of the calendar, which has been awesome to see, because it's easy to forget that at the beginning of the year, it was the opposite of that. And everyone was freaking out about it.
Yeah. Like, I'm just thinking how Toronto Maple Leafs would it be if we had traded Mitch Marner in the summer at like his lowest point, and then he has the season that he does for someone else. Like that would have been very on par for the Leafs.
Very on brand.
I think my working theory is that Marner and Nylander share like a hockey puck that has like an NBA Jam, it like spreads the talent between the two of them, because it always seems when one is on, the other one is just like being like baptized in fire by the fandom. But
Never have
no,
both.
no, they can't both be on at the same time. But yeah, like as Kyle said, him adding a shot to his game is exactly what he needed, because it makes him a lot less predictable, and as a whole makes the Leafs top line a lot less predictable as well. Because I think like I always go back to that Montreal series where it was just so easy for that top line or that shutdown line for Montreal with Gallagher and Danault to shut down that top line, because they just had to like hyper focus on Matthews, because they knew Marner wasn't going to finish many of his shots. And as great as Zach Hyman is, he can't be the goal scorer on that line. So it was just a super easy line to shut down. But now that you have Mitch scoring goals, that means that if you leave Mitch open, he's just going to score on you instead. So then you're like, oh crap, I got to go and like cover Mitch now. And then it's like, oh, Matthews is wide open. That's an easy shot for him. And oh, no, never mind. He didn't score. It's oh, there's bunting. He scored. Yeah, like it's a lot, like it just adds so much more to that line. And I like, it's reaching the point as well where it's like, people always talk about Marner as a product of Matthews, or Matthews as a product of Marner, depending on which section of the fan base you're a part of. But there are people, trust me. But like, I think it's just, they're both just two incredible players that just also make each other that much better, because if they were on their own, they'd be a lot easier to cover. Just like if it was Matthews with Bunting and Koch, Matthews is a lot easier to cover that. And like if it's Marner with Kerfoot and Mikheyev, like Marner's a lot easier to cover then. So like I think just, although I can't say that about Mikheyev, he's on like a 30-goal pace this season. So, but yeah, like it's just, it adds so much versatility, and I think that's going to be huge in the playoffs if the Magic can keep going to the playoffs. It always seems to die once the playoffs start.
If you guys had to put money on it right now, let's say you could, I don't know, win $1 million. Would you?
It's a big bet.
Yes. Would you have faith that Marner and Matthews carry this regular season performance into the playoffs, or would you not take the bet?
You want to take that one?
I don't know.
That is literally the $1 million question.
Yeah, like the logical part of me is like, yeah, obviously, but then there's just that tortured soul within me that has seen it go away.
The 2% on
ice
shooting percentage, and
I mean, like we've seen Matthews dominate in the playoffs before. Like he had his 4-goal series performance against the Capitals in his rookie year.
Yeah.
He had 5 against the Bruins in 2019. We know he's capable of it. We haven't really seen it from Mitch as much. And like, that's also going to be the big question with him, and why he still, I don't think, gets the credit he deserves league wide. I think once they get past that hump finally and just like slay the beast in the first round, they're probably going to go on a cup run, and Matthews will probably break the record for goals in a playoff series. Like I could legitimately see him scoring 20 in a playoff season at like, well, this version of him. But yeah, I want to say that I would take that bet, but I just don't have the confidence to do it.
Is it March 28th, 2022 on episode 25 of TLN? I'm going to say that they absolutely pop off in the playoffs. I would fully put all my money, my home, everything. Let's just say that. And I'm going to put trust in Matthews and Marner that they're going to do something different this year. Now, when the playoffs come, God forbid we get bounced in the first round and they are terrible, I will eat my words and figuratively be homeless with no money. Yeah, I don't know. I think that for some reason, I feel like this is different because of the start of Marner's season. I feel like something's a little different with Matthews. And I think that I like this Matthews this season. I think he's been a little bit more of a leader in terms of like how outspoken he is and things that he's been doing on the ice. So I don't know. I think that they're going to go to another level. That's just a gut feeling. I could be very wrong. And by no means am I jinxing anyone. I just, for some reason, I think this playoffs round that they're about to go into might be different.
Yeah, my concern going into the playoffs would be more the second line and how inconsistent they've been for much of the year in terms of they've been able to score for the most part, but a lot of that has been like a high shooting percentage and stuff like that and PDO driven. But yeah, like right now, just looking at how dominant they've been, regardless of who they've been up against, whether it's been a top team they're matching up against or whether it is a bottom feeder or whatever, they've been able to score at will all season long, and specifically Matthews and his insane goal totals and stuff. So if you're to bet on it, like, yeah, obviously the bet is going to be like they continue to do it, right? Until you look at like the last couple of years and all of a sudden you see the doom and gloom again. But like the odds of him doing it again and having like a on ice shooting percentage for like 2% again, like the odds of that are so low, and yet it's going to happen. So,
well, I think by Caroline guaranteeing what she just did, I think what's actually going to happen is they are going to light it up. Like they'll probably amount for like 4 goals each in the playoff, but no other line will score, and our goalies will allow 5.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
That would also be very on brand.
Yep.
That'd be. I'm going to send that clip of me saying that to the head of the Toronto Maple Leafs and say, "Listen, my house is on fire. You guys better get it together."
They can and they will.
Let's before we wrap this up, NHL trade deadline. Scott, I know that you covered it a lot with DFO. So, first of all, a lot of Leafs fans kind of split. Some wanted to see more prominent moves. Others were like, we did pretty well. What are your guys' thoughts, and maybe even head into Giordano and, the depth that Kyle Dubas and company added to the blue line?
Yeah, Scott, you can take this one first.
So like, admittedly, obviously I didn't cover just the Leafs with Daily Faceoff. It was
does it all, everyone. He does it all.
It was a league-wide coverage on that day. I think I wrote 12 articles over the course of like 9 to 5 was about the time range. So my brain was like mush.
Did you figure out a word count at all or no?
Oh, we have to like hit 200 words is like kind of the policy with each article, which isn't too bad overall, but like sometimes it can be tough to hit 200 words when you're talking about Alex Biega getting traded for future consideration.
Hey, we got Philippe Myers out of it. So
yeah.
Or the Marlies at least.
Going into the deadline for the Leafs, I think their biggest weaknesses were they really needed like another defenseman to really help solidify the top 4. They needed a top 6 forward to help add a spark to Tavares and Nylander. They needed probably a 4th line forward to rejuvenate Spezza and Simmons, or kick them out of the lineup and just like do it justifiably. And like maybe a goalie. I've been pretty adamant on this podcast that I thought that was a terrible idea to go after a goalie at the deadline. I'm glad that they didn't, because the only goalie, maybe Kakkonen was like a name that caught my mind, but like he also wouldn't have gone if Fleury didn't go to Minnesota. And as for the top 6 forwards, like there weren't any like that I would have wanted to add to the team that got moved at the deadline. So I can't even get mad that they didn't, because it just seems like there wasn't a market for it unless they're giving up like a crap ton. So really all they did at the deadline was fill their other 2 issues, which was they added a defenseman who solidifies their blue line to the point where they have like 4 pairs that I'd be comfortable with being in a top 4 role if injuries happened. Except maybe Muzzin Hole still, but like that depends on which version of Muzzin we get.
Yeah.
We could justifiably have Muzzin sitting out as a healthy scratch in the playoffs, and it would make sense. Like that's how deep the blue line is. And then Blackwell, he adds an extra element to that 4th line, not just what he does to that line, but also just adding more depth overall to the team. And it allows you to maybe move other pieces around to try and find that 3rd player on that Tavares line to like spark them. Because that seems to be the biggest mystery at this point, is how you get that line going. And I think that'll be key to the playoffs. Whether that's just kicking their asses enough to the point where they start to do better, or you just find a player that works well for them. Maybe you split them up. I like maybe you switch Marner and Nylander for a little bit just to like get both of them going, or maybe those end up being lines that work well in a playoff format and you don't need to have Matthews with Marner.
Right.
Maybe you tear up the third line a little bit and split those units up because the third line works so well. Who knows? But yeah, just overall, like bringing in Giordano and Blackwell, you didn't have to give up a first round pick. Sure, maybe they could have gotten good prospects with the seconds and the third, but having Mark Giordano on the Leafs is pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. What they gave up like 3 top 100, or technically 4, I guess, with the Lyubushkin trade as well, which people kind of forget when you talk about the deadline, because sure, it didn't happen at the deadline, but it's still a trade that for all intents and purposes, at least right now, was a rental for the playoff run in Lyubushkin. So you add Lyubushkin, you add Colin Blackwell, and then the big move, of course, is Giordano. And you get a versatile depth forward who probably plays on the fourth line, but might get a shot higher in the lineup. We'll see if Blackwell gets any opportunities there. But then Lyubushkin, who has already been playing on the top pair with Riley and has looked solid on all the various pairings that he's been on. And then Giordano, who at least for now is another left-hand defenseman that can fill the void of Jake Muzzin being out. We don't know when Muzzin will be back. When he does come back, if it'll be the old Jake Muzzin or the same Jake Muzzin that we've kind of seen this year, who has struggled a lot. And don't forget, Muzzin has missed the final games of the last 2 playoff series as well. So you think about all these different things, and it just makes a lot of sense to go out and get somebody like Giordano as well, who really solidifies not only the left side, but is an injury kind of insurance policy for Muzzin, and then really makes you feel comfortable with your defense and having 3, like Scott mentioned, even maybe 4 different pairings that you'd feel comfortable with going into the playoffs. So I think to do all of that, not give up a first round pick, not give up one of your top prospects, is a really solid deadline. Obviously, there are a couple other things you would have liked to see addressed, but that's the case for every team in the league. It's not going to be a perfect roster going into the playoffs. It's going to be the best that you can kind of get with the cap and everything like that. So I think Dubas did a really solid job. We'll see what Nick Abruzzese can do coming in sometime this week, and see if he can spark the fourth line as well. See if maybe he gets in over Spezza Simmons and we see more offensive fourth line, things like that. Maybe he gets a chance higher in the lineup. But I think overall you have to be pretty happy with the Leafs deadline.
And I think what really helps as well is the Leafs addressed a weakness with this trade. While I didn't really quite see that with the other teams in the Atlantic, like Boston's biggest weakness is the fact that beyond Patrice Bergeron, their center depth is like embarrassingly bad. And they decide to get another left shot defenseman, which they didn't really need because they had 3 good ones already. And then the Panthers are by far the best offensive team in the league, not as great defensively, and their goaltending is actually a little bit more problematic than the Leafs because they're basically relying on Bobrovsky to not be as bad as he has been since joining the Panthers, or a rookie goalie. And they decided to just add another forward, which I guess, you know what, outscore the problem. That's not a bad idea either. Might not translate to the playoffs based on how we have seen the playoffs go in the past. And then Tampa Bay, I guess like they technically addressed their biggest weakness, which was like forward depth, because like what really drove those last 2 cup runs for them was that, I mean, people call it a third line, but it was honestly their second line. Yeah, it was their second line. And they lost all 3 of them, like just in one off season for nothing. Or no, I guess they got a pick for Gaudreau, I think, but still.
Yeah, it was they traded his rights, so it was like nothing.
Yeah, and they replaced him with Corey Perry, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, and I think someone internally, I forget who it was.
Ross Colton, I think, jumped up the lineup, something like that.
Yeah. And so at the deadline, they sort of address it by bringing in Nick Paul and Brandon Hagel, which like all I could hear about for like trade deadline coverage was how those two were this year's like Coleman and Goodrose at the deadline. But I also like, I don't think they quite are that level. So I feel like they almost just like fooled themselves into thinking what made it work, what worked for them in their last two cup runs is this is the solution again, when I think there could have been better ways to go about it. So in that sense, I think it was a win for the Leafs at the deadline overall. But obviously whoever wins the deadline is the one that goes the furthest in the playoffs. So yeah.
I have to ask you guys a question, just talking about blue liners so much. At the office here in Edmonton, there was a question. Would you rather have Morgan Rielly on your team or Darnell Nurse?
Morgan Rielly. Are we including contracts as well? Because definitely Morgan Rielly in that case.
We were
yeah, contract included, definitely Rielly, but I think it's more of a toss-up than you might give it credit. But
yeah, like
I'd have to look at a couple more things, but I'd lean Rielly.
Yeah, admittedly, me immediately going Rielly is the equivalent of Mike immediately going Draisaitl in a Draisaitl and Matthews conversation. Every time I look at Nurse's stats, he has been better this year, so I'll definitely give him credit to that. But
that extension,
the main reason he's making that money is because Ken Holland thought that him passing to McDavid a bunch made him a really good defenseman. So yeah,
we'll save that. Maybe we'll save that conversation for the.
I think this year he's been better.
Yeah, he's definitely been better. Like his defensive game has been a lot better this year. I would also I feel like Rielly's has been just a little bit better this year as well. Maybe not like it's still not great for a defenseman, but I think by his standards, like usually he's pretty noticeable in his screw ups. So I think the fact that there's a lot less of those this year for him has, and that's also really helped the Leafs blue line earlier on in the season when Muzzin and Hall were struggling. But yeah, I'd have to do a much bigger dive into the numbers to make like a legitimate decision on that one.
Maybe next show. Maybe we'll get that ready for next show. Okay, quickly before we wrap things up, big game for the Leafs tomorrow, taking on the Boston Bruins for obvious reasons. This is always a big game for us. But right now, the Boston Bruins are 8-1-1 in their last 10 games and also on a 4-game winning streak. And obviously the game is in Boston. So what does Toronto have to do in particular with this Boston Bruins team to ensure that we leave the game with 2 points? Because right now we're pretty neck and neck with the Bruins in the standings.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like the standings is something that we haven't thought about in so long, right? Just with last year in the North Division and kind of it being like the Leafs first seed for so long going into the end of the season, and then any kind of playoff race from 2020 feeling so long ago. So it's nice having meaningful regular season games again. I'll say that because for much of the season, it's been, regular season doesn't matter. Whatever happens in the playoffs is what matters. But having that playoff run should hopefully have some good games in it. And we saw it actually last night as well with the Florida game being really solid there as well. So against Boston, it's kind of the same that you would say against any opponent, is that the Leafs got to dictate play and play their way. Boston is a team that, especially with the Hampus Lindholm addition, are really strong defensively, one of the best defensive teams, if not the best in the league, especially when you look at Bergeron's season that he's having and probably locking up another Selke trophy for him this year. So I'm really interested to see that top of the lineup matchup. But yeah, the Leafs against the Bruins, I think the big thing for them is the depth matchup, because like Scott was mentioning during the trade deadline wrap up, that the Bruins don't have like any center depth whatsoever. And if there's one thing that the Leafs have an advantage over the Bruins, especially, is the depth forwards and some of the depth scoring that they could get. And so after a rough game from the fourth line, I'm interested to see what they do there. Nylander was demoted to the third line in the last game, whether that stays or whether he's back up to the second line and they try some stuff. So there's a lot of interesting things to watch going into the next game against the Bruins. And on top of it all, it's a huge game in the standings because they're tied at 87 points.
Yeah, I like going off of what Kyle said. I think the Bruins are definitely an underrated team in this division. I always find it funny. I always like whenever I see the conversations around the four teams in the Atlantic. It's kind of funny how it always coincides with which teams are overperforming their expected goals and which teams are underperforming their expected goals. Because like right now, I think, or looking at the stats here, the Bruins are actually the best team as far as expected goals for percentage goes, but they're almost more than 3 goals under that as far as goals for percentage goes. So like they don't get enough credit for how good they have been. And like meanwhile you have like the Panthers who are more than 2 goals above their expected goals for. Lightning are almost 3 above. The Leafs are almost 4 below too. That's how bad their goaltending's been this year. But yeah, like I don't think they get enough credit this year just because they just haven't been getting the goal scoring that they usually do, because it's basically just been Bergeron, Marchand, and Hall and Pasternak. It helps that they are now able to split that depth up a bit. They no longer have that top line of Marchand, Bergeron, and Pasternak anymore. They've moved him passed it down to the second line to carry Eric Halla instead. But yeah, you never really know with a game against the Bruins, especially in Boston. The Leafs, it seems like they either go in and play some of their best hockey and come out with the win, or they get routed. So hopefully it's the first option. But I will say this though, the Leafs have been very good at playing against teams like the Bruins, the Lightning, the Panthers since Sheldon Keefe took over. And I think we'll see something like that again. Like I think the loss to Tampa Bay, I guess they had a couple losses to Florida as well in 1920, but like the loss to Tampa Bay was their first one against like a legitimate contender like since Sheldon Keefe took over.
All right, guys. Good stuff. Well, the Leafs play tomorrow. I believe 7 p.m. Eastern time, puck drop. We'll be back here next Monday. This has been episode 25. Here in Edmonton, it is snowing. It looked like it was snowing in Toronto yesterday when Canada, Jamaica. What a great way to start off the spring, then a nice snowfall. So everyone stay warm. My goodness, I'm picturing just honest to God being on a beach 24/7 until we get to the summer here in Canada. But yeah, everyone enjoy your week, and we'll be back here next Monday. This has been the Leafsnation Radio Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode.